You're standing over a hot stove on a Tuesday morning, and your butter is spitting water at you. You scoop a dollop of Smart Balance into the pan. The same dairy-free spread Conagra has sold you for years. It doesn't melt. It pops. It scorches. On toast, it just sits there, a soft, gelatinous paste. You aren't crazy. Your stove isn't broken. Conagra quietly reformulated the recipe and slashed the vegetable oil content from 64% down to 39%. They replaced most of it with water and emulsifiers. They kept the green tub identical. They kept charging you the same premium price, over $10 for a 13-ounce tub. This is what your grocery bill actually is now. You aren't just paying more. You're paying record prices for watered-down, hollowed-out, structurally compromised versions of the products you love. There's a name for this. Two names, actually, and the mechanics behind them are far more deliberate than you think. In October 2021, NPR's Planet Money podcast coined the word skimpflation. Co-host Greg Rosalsky defined it as businesses secretly degrading the quality of their products to offset inflation without raising visible sticker prices. Its older sibling is shrinkflation, shrinking the package, keeping the price. Together, they form a coordinated playbook. And it runs on one cognitive trick. Economists call it price salience. Sticker prices are loud. You memorize them. You compare them across brands. You'd notice 50 cents added to a box of cereal in a heartbeat. But the net weight printed on the side, the ingredient list on the back, those are quiet, non-salient. You don't track them. The manufacturers know that. In October 2025, economists Aljoscha Janssen of Singapore Management University and Johannes Kasinger of Tilburg University published the definitive study in marketing science. They analyzed a decade of NielsenIQ scanner data covering millions of products across tens of thousands of U.S. stores. Their finding? Product downsizing is more than 5 times as prevalent as upsizing when measured by total retail sales volume. Across the 10-year window, 1.9% of unique products were permanently downsized, and in the year after a downsize, the price per unit volume jumped an average of 12%. A double extraction, less product, higher unit cost. Janssen explained the cruelest twist. Rather than buying less to save money, consumers focus on the per unit cost and end up buying more units. They underreact. He called it what it is, an underreaction to non-salient price attributes that incentivizes retailers to use obfuscation strategies in a deliberate attempt to increase profit margins, despite being to the detriment of their consumers. So how do you obfuscate? Start with the package. When manufacturers downsize a product, they don't shrink the whole box proportionally. That would change the shelf footprint, the physical space the product occupies. The consumer would notice immediately. Instead, they engineer the volume out invisibly. They deepen the punt, the concave indentation at the base of a plastic bottle. They taper the sides of a cardboard box. They shave a single millimeter off the thickness of a chocolate bar. Or they introduce what's legally called non-functional slack fill, empty space, inside opaque packaging, engineered to mislead. In the U.S., Section 403D of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, 21 U.S.C. Section 343D, deems a food misbranded if its container is made, formed, or filled to be misleading. But the FDA carves out broad exceptions. Slack fill is legal if it protects contents, think nitrogen in a chip bag, or accommodates high-speed sealing machinery, or allows for product settling in transit. Subjective, exploitable, almost impossible for federal regulators to police. Which brings us to McCormick, the world's largest spice manufacturer. They'd been here before. In May 2000, the FTC settled an administrative complaint against them, file number 961-0050, for illegal price discrimination under the Robinson-Patman Act. Regulators had been watching. It didn't matter. In early 2015, a global shortage sent wholesale black pepper prices spiking by roughly 50%. McCormick had a choice: raise the sticker price or hide the cost inside the tin. In March 2015, the company began shipping newly designed tins to national retailers. The ground pepper went from 4.0 ounces to 3.0 ounces, a 25% reduction. The peppercorn grinders went from 1.24 ounces to 1.0 ounce, a 19% cut. The external dimensions of every container stayed exactly the same. You couldn't see inside. The tin felt the same in your hand. The price on the shelf, $3.49, didn't budge. But the unit price you actually paid jumped from 87 cents an ounce to $1.16, a 33.3% effective increase, completely invisible at point of sale. In June 2015, twin consumer class action lawsuits, Vladimirsky and Ortiz, were filed in the Northern District of Illinois and the Southern District of New York. By October, the Judicial Panel on Multi-District Litigation consolidated them in D.C. as MDL number 115 MC 01825. The case landed in front of Judge Ellen S. Huvelle. In November 2016, she issued a 110-page memorandum opinion denying McCormick's motion to dismiss. She wrote that plaintiffs had plausibly alleged they were deceived about the amount of pepper and paid inflated prices for them as a result of a conspiracy. She pointed to the opaque packaging and, crucially, to McCormick's own internal documents. In July 2019, Huvelle certified consumer classes in California, Florida, and Missouri. She wrote that purchasers were uniformly exposed to the same alleged misrepresentation, pepper containers that did not have visible fill lines. In February 2020, McCormick settled for $2.5 million. They admitted no wrongdoing, and the settlement was a fraction of what they'd pocketed during 15 months of underfilled tins on millions of American kitchen counters. But shrinkflation has a sibling problem. Sometimes you can't shrink the box any further without breaking the slack fill laws. Sometimes the commodity spike is too big to hide in empty space alone. Mondelēz International, the Chicago-headquartered $36 billion conglomerate behind Oreo, Cadbury, Toblerone, and Milka, found this out in 2025. They were veterans of the practice. Back in 2016, they'd shaved 20 grams off their UK Toblerone bar, a move British media dubbed the Brexit Toblerone. This time, West African cocoa bean prices had surged from $2,500 per metric ton in 2022 to over $10,000 per metric ton by 2024. Their flagship Milka Alpine Milk Bar was in trouble. So Mondelēz did both at once. They shaved the bar from 100 grams to 90 grams, making it 1 millimeter thinner, and they raised the sticker price from €1.49 to €1.99. The shopper saw a 33.5% sticker price hike, but the actual unit cost they paid jumped 48.3%, from €14.90 per kilogram to €22.11. For every million bars produced, Mondelēz saved 10 metric tons of physical chocolate and extracted an additional €500,000 in gross revenue from consumers. Their corporate operating margins, hovering around 15.5%, were insulated from the cocoa spike. The Consumer Advice Center Hamburg noticed, under the leadership of food packaging expert Armin Valet, in July 2025, they nominated the Milka Bar for their Rip-Off Packaging of the Year award. Then they sued. On May 13, 2026, the Regional Court of Bremen ruled against Mondelēz. The court wrote that by retaining the design, width, and length of the packaging, Mondelēz visually conveyed the expectation of a product known to consumers for years. Simply updating the tiny weight number from 100 grams to 90 grams was, the court said, insufficient. Shoppers were extremely unlikely to recheck the net weight of a familiar product at the point of sale. The packaging visually tricked consumers. But there's a limit to all of this, and Conagra learned it the hard way. Back to that frying pan. In summer 2022, global vegetable oil prices were exploding thanks to supply chain disruptions and geopolitical shocks. Conagra needed to protect margins on its smart balance spread, so they did something extraordinary. They cut the vegetable oil from 64% of the formula down to 39%. They replaced nearly 40% of the oil with water and emulsifiers. By estimate, they slashed cost of goods sold on a 13-ounce tub by roughly 30%. The price? Held at $9.99, in some high-inflation markets, climbing past $10. And here's the second loophole that made it legal. Under FDA Regulation 21 CFR 101.4, ingredients must be listed in descending order of weight, but there is no legal requirement to tell you, on the front of the package, that the recipe is changed. But you can hide a thinner chocolate bar. You can't hide butter that won't melt. Over 1,100 one-star reviews flooded the brand's website. Watery garbage. Disgusting. Spits all over when frying an egg. One loyal customer wrote, "We have been loyal Smart Balance customers for a long time, but something changed. It is now really soft, spits all over when frying an egg, and doesn't melt on toast. Just as bad, it is over $10 now for the big tub. This tub is headed for the trash." On October 4, 2022, CBS News broke the story nationally. Conagra spokesperson Dan Hare tried to spin the change as making the spread easier to spread. Then, he capitulated. The company announced it would revert to the 64% oil formula. Skimpflation, it turns out, has a hard physical limit, your taste buds. So how big is all this really? On July 31st, 2025, the U.S. Government Accountability Office released report GAO-25-107451, the first major federal audit of shrinkflation. Across the whole economy, the contribution to inflation looks small, but the GAO found it's hyper-concentrated where it hurts. Household paper products, toilet paper, paper towels, saw shrinkflation contribute up to 3.0 percentage points to localized inflation between December 2019 and December 2024. Breakfast cereals, 1.6 percentage points. And here's the kicker. Only 1.1% of unique cereal items were downsized, but those items represented 8.6% of total dollar sales. Translation: shrinkflation targets the most popular, highest volume national brands, the ones in your pantry right now. The GAO wrote that consumers tend to be less responsive to downsizing than to equivalent price increases. That limited responsiveness comes from lack of awareness of subtle packaging changes, infrequent purchases, or strong consumer preferences for certain products and brands. Capital One Shopping Research, in December 2025, found shrinkflation drove between 3.3% and 10.3% of total price inflation among selected national grocery brands from early 2019 through late 2023. And consumers, finally, are catching on. In November 2023, Ipsos surveyed 24,711 adults across 33 countries. 46% had noticed shrinkflation. Awareness was highest in Great Britain at 64%, France at 63%, Germany at 62%. By January 2024, a follow-up found 22% had also noticed skimpflation, the quality version. The political response followed. On March 7, 2024, in his State of the Union, President Biden called it out directly, urging Congress to pass the Shrinkflation Prevention Act, Senate Bill 3808, introduced by Senator Bob Casey. You get charged the same amount, Biden said, and you got about 10% fewer Snickers in that bag. Senator Elizabeth Warren had moved earlier. On March 30, 2022, she sent a letter to Brian Deese, chair of the White House Competition Council, urging federal investigation of skimpflation across service sectors, specifically targeting Hertz and Avis for charging premium prices while gutting customer service staff. France moved first on the regulatory front. On April 1, 2024, a national decree from Bruno Le Maire's Ministry of the Economy took effect, requiring large supermarkets to post visible shelf notices for at least 2 months whenever a product shrinks but holds its price. Austria followed. On April 1, 2026, its Anti-Deceptive Packaging Act came into force. Mandatory shelf edge warnings whenever a product's quantity drops, its packaging stays similar, and its unit price climbs 3% or more. And on June 2, 2026, Canada's Competition Bureau, under Interim Commissioner Jean Pratt, opened a sweeping antitrust investigation into the food supply chain. Their explicit targets: algorithmic pricing, loyalty programs, shrinkflation, and skimpflation. None of this would have happened without one man. Edgar Dworsky, former Massachusetts Assistant Attorney General, founder of Consumer World, based in Somerville, Massachusetts. For 3 decades, Dworsky has spent his own money buying groceries, weighing them on a kitchen scale, photographing the packaging, documenting every quiet recipe change. His archives are the source material for almost every major federal exposé and congressional testimony. In September 2022, his investigation revealed Campbell's Soup Company had quietly swapped real potatoes out as the primary ingredient in cream of potato soup, replacing them with water and modified cornstarch. The front of the can stayed comforting, the brand imagery stayed warm, the value leaked quietly out the back. So what does all of this actually mean? Beyond pepper tins and chocolate bars and butter that won't melt, it means the social contract between you and the brands that feed you has quietly broken. For generations, brand loyalty meant a consistent price for consistent quality. That deal is over. Inflation used to be an abstract macro force: supply chains, monetary policy, currency. Now consumers see it differently, as corporate deception, a rigged game with rules written in microscopic print on the back of the box. And consumers are walking. Private label brands are booming. Historic loyalties, built over decades of trust, are dissolving inside a single quarter of margin protection. But the corporate playbook is already evolving. The next move is called upflation, pushing you into higher-priced premium tiers by quietly starving the supply of the standard, affordable product. Add junk fees. Add algorithmic pricing that adjusts the sticker hour by hour. The legacy of this era isn't that we get fewer chips in a bag or less soap in a bottle. It's that the baseline quality of everyday physical life has been systematically degraded, leaving you feeling poorer even when your income hasn't changed. You make the same money, you buy the same brands, you stand at the same stove. And somehow, the eggs just don't taste the same.